Before I start, I need to provide a little backstory. I grew up in a very sheltered life, usually only leaving the house for grocery runs and doctor appointments. I didn't even go to school. My mother decided it was best for me to be homeschooled. I was, and still am, very socially awkward as a result of my upbringing, though I'm getting better. One thing I did the house for as a child was to compete in talent competitions. I was a pianist. I still am, though a little rusty. I had a newspaper article published for me once to advertise a fundraising concert I was holding at my local church. I needed the funds to go to my competition, 1,500 miles away. In the article, the journalist recorded a quote from me. She had asked what I thought of my talent, and being a child in a Christian house, I replied, "It's not my talent. God let me borrow it." Fast forward until I became an adult, I was eager to leave the house and get out of my own. I decided to get my commercial driver's license so I could get out and see much of the world as I could. Besides, driving long hours and occasional nights of having trouble finding a highway decent place to park at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. One night, I was pulling into a truck stop to park for the night. As I was taking my dog out to do his business, I passed by the truck next to mine. It had its driver's side window down, and the driver was sitting in the driver's seat. He called out to me as I passed him, complimenting that he liked my dog and was asking if he was friendly. I thanked him and informed him that my dog was shy of strangers, being that I sat in the truck all day with no human interaction, besides the occasional honk and the guy flipping me off for being slow. I longed for conversations, and I told him I would be right back. A few minutes later, after pulling my dog into my truck, I walked over to talk to my parking spot neighbor. We chatted for a while, him in his chair and I sitting on the top of the step on the side of his truck. After about 20 minutes, he asked me if I noticed that his arm had been bumped mine 7 times. This surprised me, as I had not noticed it at all. Thinking back on it, I believe he was testing me how simultaneously I was aware. I told him that I did not notice. It was cold outside, and considering that it was in the middle of the winter, he invited me to sit in his truck to continue our conversation. This is where I should have had alarm bells ringing in my head, but growing up so sheltered, I was too trusting of people, so I entered. We continued to talk, though the conversation started crossing lines, asking questions that were too personal. He was asking me stuff like, "What's your phone number? Who are your parents? What was your grandparents' full names? Where do you live?" etc. Regretfully, I answered him. We also had to swap seats during the conversation. First, he had moved to the passenger seat so I could sit in the driver's seat, but then we swapped to where I was in the passenger seat and he was on the driver's seat. The conversation started to take a weird and creepy turn. After all those questions, he asked, "Did you notice that in my eyes that have no color?" His eyes were black, just 2 black orbs surrounded by white of his eyes. This is where I started to feel very uneasy. He started talking about my childhood, and this is where he said something that disturbed me the most. He asked, "Didn't you have a talent as a kid?" I said yes, and I did play the piano. He replied, "Wouldn't that be a lie since you only borrowed it?" I had not mentioned to him anything about the article, and the city that it was from was too small to be noticed by someone that lived far away. I was ready to get the hell out of here. I was trying to think of an excuse without raising suspicion. He started to convince me to ride with him to his next delivery and just leave my truck where it was, and he would bring me back the next day. I declined. He then asked if I could visit him in his home. Again, I declined. It had been several hours, so I decided to tell him I needed to take my dog out to do his business again, so he didn't go to my truck. I exited his truck and took my dog out again, but this time, when my dog was done, I went back to my truck and locked the doors. I also tied up both seats forward so it would be difficult for him if he entered my truck, buying me time if needed. The next morning, he was gone. I continued my day relieved that I was away from him. A few hours later, he called me. "So, why did you tow your seats forward last night?" I told him it was to keep my dog from jumping on them. He continued to talk to me, though I kept my answer short this time. I blocked his numbers after he hung up, and later decided to change my phone number. I know I was lucky that it didn't go further than a creepy conversation. I am more careful about who I talk to and where I am. Be careful, everyone. Never get into a stranger's vehicles, no matter how friendly and innocent they may seem. So, my first semester at my out-of-state college had just ended, and I was on my way home from my brother's wedding. I'm about an hour away from my current residence with a little over 3 hours left of my trip. Everything is going great, and I'm just cruising with the traffic. It was a notably busy day for the particular stretch of interstate. As I said, all went well until I checked my mirror. There's this truck a little further back from my side of my car in the lane next to me. I looked up because even though it was in the middle of the afternoon and super sunny out, this dude is flashing his lights at me. I tried to brush it off, assuming he just wants to get into my lane, so I try moving. He stays behind me for the whole time, not letting any other cars between us. He keeps flashing his lights at me, and I looked up at him. He waves and honks. This was a red flag, but I took it the wrong way. I'm like, oh shit, I wonder if he's signaling me to pull over. I hope nothing is wrong with my car. Now, the only reason why I say this is because the week before I was leaving, I had gotten a hole on my tire and had it patched. I was worried that the patch had fallen out and that my tire was going flat as I traveled around 60 miles per hour. Now I'm freaking out about my car and planning to pull off at the next exit. Fortunately, it comes up quickly, and there is a gas station with some customers visible from the exit ramp. I head there and pull over at the gas pump. Curiously, the trucker follows me off the interstate and into the same parking lot, but he parked in a designed truck zone. I get out just before he parks and walk around the car doing the quick inspection. I see him start to get out of his truck and I decide to buy some gas, even though I had filled it up before I left. As I swipe my card to pay for my gas, the truck driver had reached my car. Luckily for me, since I was already pretty freaked out about this whole incident, I had my phone on my hand with 911 already dialed, so I would just have to call the button. I left my driver door open and stayed between that and the gas hose. Him standing a few feet away from the back of the end of my car. The hose is separating us. The first thing this guy said to me was, "Well, aren't you a pretty thing?" I'm screaming in my head right now, imagining all the possible scenarios for emergency escape. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s, and around 170 pounds. Me? 18 and 125 pounds without much muscle or fat anywhere on me. I wouldn't have been able to fight back much. Anyways, I tell him thank you. He offers me to buy gas and I decline, saying my parents gave me money. I was actually worried that he would expect something in return if I had taken his offer. He asked me questions like where am I from, where am I going, etc. Something went off my head that is just a lie. Like a motherfucker. And so I did. I didn't tell him what college I really went to. where I was really heading to, and what was I doing? Nothing. My gas was done pumping after 1 minute, and with that, I told him goodbye, jumped in my car, and got the fuck out of there. I kept an eye on him as I left, making sure he didn't follow me any longer, and he didn't. Never saw him again. I didn't know what he wanted from me that day, whether it was just telling me how attractive I was, or if he had planned something much worse. I really regret not reporting it to the police. Since this incident, I've always been leery of truck drivers. This was a story I grew up hearing my mom telling me. I was really young when this happened, and I know for a fact that this was before I was 5. I only have some foggy memory of the event, especially because my mom at the time didn't want to freak me out. For some context, first, we had a family like all over the country. I remember spending so much time of my childhood just on road trips from state to state to visit family. So we know our ins and outs on traveling. 2. When I was a child, I would randomly hug strangers and tell them that I loved them. I was always filled with joy and love that it always spilled over on other people. There was basically only one stranger I never immediately latched into the second time I saw them. And that was this story. So my mom was taking me to visit some relatives while my dad was staying at home with my brothers. She had to go house sitting, and in general is a better caretaker than my father, so it made sense that I went with her. We were driving for hours until we finally hit the rest stop and got out to use the restroom. Now there was already this guy in the parking lot, and according to my mom, it looked like he was watching everyone who entered and was leaving the restroom. The second we got out of the car, he did too. My mom held my hand as we were heading into the restroom, but immediately picked up on the fact that I let go of her hand to hold her other hand, the side of her away from the man. Now, looking back, she did tell me that it was clear somewhere in my child brain I picked up some sign of danger, because I avoided the man as much as I could and would quicken my pace into the restroom and the car. I never did that with another stranger ever again. I had never blatantly avoided another adult like that. Anyways, we do our business and head back to the car, and the man had gone back to his car and watched us leave, only to then follow us in his own car. My mom immediately realized what was going on and tried to shake him off on the highway. He wouldn't budge and tried to get as close as he could. Apparently, while doing this, a semi-truck driver noticed how frantic enough she was driving and could see her looking back at his car. He realized what was going on and drove up to her side and kinda made eye contact with her, and they were on the same page from then on out. It turns out that the driver called up his radio to other truckers and told them what was going on, and a bunch of drivers from different routes nearby came into the same highway we were traveling on. A few minutes later, they began on blocking out the guy's car and essentially trapping him away from my mother and I as he turned into the exit and got out of the highway to another rest stop as the original truck driver followed us in. He got out and talked to my mom and told her he picked up what was happening. He asked us if we were okay and drove with us to Burger King's and got something out to eat. We talked and he followed us back into the road until eventually we went our separate routes. So to the guy who was probably trying to kidnap my mom and me, let's not meet again. To the truck driver who probably saved our lives, thank you.